She's ranked 18th. So why does she need a bodyguard ring like a world number 1? There is a woman standing 3 rows deep at a practice court fence in Flushing Meadows, phone held straight over her head, arm locked, filming a rally she genuinely cannot see. She isn't Filipino. She isn't even sure who she's filming. Ask her and she'll tell you she came to watch Carlos Alcaraz warm up on Ash, and then she heard a noise coming from a side court and just followed it. The noise has a name, Alexandra Eala, 21 years old, ranked 18th in the world as of August 24, 2026. And around her, not during a match, just a practice session, is a ring of security guards that the woman with the phone keeps trying to shoot over. That ring is the real story here, not the fans, not the flags, the ring. Because a world number 18 doesn't usually get a ring like that. A world number 18 gets a coach, a hitting partner, and a rope line the size of a coffee shop queue. So here's the question I want you to hold on to for the next 20-some minutes, because by the end of this video I think you'll see the entire sport differently. Why is the United States Tennis Association, an organization that does not spend money by accident, treating an 18th ranked player as if she already belongs in the top 3? Why the obvious story is the wrong story. The easy version of this writes itself in about 90 seconds. Filipino star has passionate fans. Filipino diaspora shows up in force. Warm, colorful, a nice little cultural moment, forgotten by tomorrow's news cycle. That version isn't wrong. It's just not the interesting part. The interesting part is what US Open Fan Week actually is. It's the 7 days before the main draw, this year running from August 23rd through August 29th. And it is, quietly, the week a Grand Slam shows you exactly what it thinks its money is going to do for the next 2 weeks. Which practice courts get assigned to which players, decision. Which practices get put on a livestream, decision. Who gets invited onto the marquee exhibition card, decision. How much security budget gets allocated to one specific 21-year-old, very much a decision and an expensive one. When all of those decisions start clustering around a player whose ranking says solidly good, not yet elite. Something is happening underneath the number. And that something has consequences for how a sport allocates its cameras, for which players get the sponsor money, for which countries the tour prioritizes next. If you care about tennis as a sport and as a business, watching an 18th ranked player get treated like a top 3 seed means you're watching a market do in public something it usually only does behind closed doors. Stick with me because the payoff needs a little patience. And if you want to see where this goes, subscribe now, because we're going to be tracking every one of her matches for the rest of this tournament. 5 things you need to know first. Before we go further, 5 facts, fast, because you'll need them for everything that follows. 1. Alexandra Eala is 21 years old, from the Philippines, and as of August 24, 2026, she hit a new career-high ranking of world number 18, up from number 20 just weeks earlier. 2. She's in the 2026 US Open main draw on direct ranking entry. No wild card, no lucky qualifying run. She earned it outright. 3. Earlier this summer she won her first ever WTA Tour-level singles title, the Mubadala DC Open in Washington, beating world number 3 Jessica Pegula in the final, 4-6, 6-4, 6-0. A real trophy on hard court weeks before New York. 4. She didn't cool off after that. She reached the 3rd round in Toronto against Katie McNally, then the 2nd round in Cincinnati. She arrived at Flushing Meadows on form, not on hope. 5. This crowd phenomenon isn't brand new. It's been building since a mobbed practice session at the Australian Open back in January, and it followed her through Indian Wells, Miami, and Wimbledon, where she became the first Filipino player ever to reach the 4th round of a Grand Slam, knocking out defending champion Iga Swiatek along the way. What's new is that the US Open itself has now built an entire week of programming around acknowledging it. That's the shift we're here to examine. For facts that don't add up to number 18, here are 4 facts. Individually, each one is easy to verify. Lined up next to each other, next to a ranking that says 18, they get strange fast. Fact 1. The ring. On the Monday of Fan Week, the same day her new career-high ranking took effect, Eala moved through the grounds of the Billie Jean King National Tennis Center, surrounded by a visible detail of security guards. That's not colorful language. That's essentially the headline of a story that ran across multiple outlets, describing her as boosting her security presence in New York after what she herself has called a dangerous incident. That incident happened at the Australian Open in January. She trained on an outside court without security, and when she tried to leave, the crowd surged. In her own words, later on a podcast appearance, she was being pushed toward a wall. The traffic of fans behind her couldn't see what was happening up front, and they kept pressing forward. She described it as kind of dangerous. After that first-round loss in Melbourne, she was reportedly escorted off court by as many as a dozen security staff. So by the time she landed in New York in August, the decision had already been made. This doesn't happen again. Multiple security personnel, guiding her at all times, even for a Monday afternoon practice session that means nothing in the standings. Now, a security detail of that size, for a player ranked outside the top 15, at a practice session during Fan Week is unusual. Look at the players ranked around her, roughly 15th through 25th in the world. You don't typically see this. So who is that ring actually protecting her from? And more importantly, why did someone inside the tournament's operations chain decide the answer was serious enough to spend real money on? Hold that thought. Fact 2. The broadcast slot. The US Open's own channels didn't just cover her. They gave her a live-streamed practice session, complete with sponsor overlay and full production treatment. Alongside Romanian veteran Elena Gabriela Ruse ahead of the main draw. A live-streamed practice with the tournament's own broadcast infrastructure behind it is a marquee-level treatment. That's the kind of slot that normally goes to the very top of the sport, the defending champion, the biggest names in the draw. This year, alongside Aryna Sabalenka's live-streamed practice, the tournament also gave that treatment to a player who, by ranking alone, is still climbing toward that tier, not already standing in it. Why does a broadcast slot the tournament typically reserves for its biggest stars go to a player still on her way up? Hold that too. Fact 3. Arthur Ashe Stadium. On Thursday, August 27th, inside Arthur Ashe Stadium, the largest tennis venue on the planet, more than 23,000 seats. The US Open hosts Stars of the Open presented by Chase, now in its 4th year as the marquee ticketed event of Fan Week. The headline foursome announced for 2026: Alexandra Eala, Brazilian sensation João Fonseca, American teen Iva Jovic, and rising American learner Tien, with additional names including Amanda Anisimova, Alex Mickelson, Marta Kostyuk, and Arthur Fils rounding out the card. The USTA's own announcement described all 4 headliners as having captivated crowds around the world while achieving already great heights. Despite being 21 or younger, everyone else on that headline list is either a player already ranked comfortably above her, or someone the sport has explicitly tagged as a next-generation face it's actively marketing. She's one of 4 names built into a night the tournament is selling actual tickets against, starting at $30 a seat, inside its biggest stadium. What does the USTA see in her that the ranking hasn't fully caught up to yet? Hold that. Fact 4. The one almost nobody notices. This is the detail that gets lost in every quick take on this story. Fan Week's Fountain Plaza stage runs a deliberately curated cultural performance series throughout the week. A Chinese lion dance to open things, a Japanese folk dance, a Thai dance, a Filipino Kinding Sindaw dance, a Bollywood Axian dance, a Mexican folkloric set from the Calpulli Mexican Dance Company, and more. That's not random booking. That's cultural programming targeted at the specific diasporas the tournament is trying to grow inside its market. And in a year when the US Open put a Filipino cultural dance performance on its main public stage, one of its own competitors is walking onto the grounds ranked 18th with a security ring on either shoulder. The cultural programming team, the broadcast team, the exhibition booking team, the security team, for different departments landing independently without some public memo coordinating them, on the same player in the same week. That kind of alignment does not happen by accident inside an organization the size of the USTA. So, what does it mean when 4 separate departments of a Grand Slam converge, without any obvious coordination, on treating an 18th ranked player like a headliner? That's the itch. That's what the rest of this video is here to scratch. You've been making an assumption this whole time. Notice something. For the last several minutes, you've been quietly assuming that crowds follow rankings, that the size of a player's audience is downstream of her results, That when you see a crowd like this, you're watching last week's scoreline made visible. That's a completely natural assumption to make. It's also, in this case, backwards. Here's the flip. The crowd around Eala during Fan Week 2026 isn't a ranking story. It's a market story. The reason the security ring exists, the reason her practice got the full broadcast treatment, the reason her name is on the ASH exhibition marquee, the reason a Filipino dance performance landed on the main public stage that same week, all of it comes down to one thing. The United States Tennis Association is doing exactly what markets do when they've identified an asset they believe is underpriced. They're moving early. They're treating her the way the sport will treat her if she's ranked in the top 5 a year or two from now, because that's where the institutional read on her already sits. Even though the WTA ranking system, which is by nature a lagging indicator, hasn't caught up. Rankings measure points banked from matches that already happened. Fan Week programming measures what a tournament believes a player is going to be worth. Right now, for Alexandra Eala, those two numbers aren't the same number. The ranking says 18. The programming says somewhere closer to 3 or 4. That gap, between what she's already proven and what the sport has already decided she's about to become, is the entire story tonight. She isn't an 18th ranked player having a nice moment. She's being treated like the highest margin unlaunched asset in women's tennis. And this is the week the sport stopped pretending otherwise. 3 proofs and they get harder to wave away. A claim like that shouldn't be taken on my word alone. So here are 3 separate proofs, and they get progressively harder to explain any other way. Proof 1, what the institution actually did. Fans can gather anywhere, for any reason. Fans are noise. The real signal is inside the institution. The choice is locked in weeks or months before Fan Week even opened. The US Open put Eala on a live-streamed practice slot. Put her on the Stars of the Open headline card at Arthur Ashe. Scheduled culturally coded programming, the Kinding Sindaw performance, on the Fountain Plaza stage during the same window fans were flooding her practice courts. 3 different departments, broadcast, marquee events, cultural programming, spending real institutional resources on her. Institutions don't spend against players they think are plateauing. They spend on players they think are about to break through. And they spend early, before the ranking officially proves it, only when the internal read is that the payoff is going to arrive faster than the numbers will show. Media coverage tells the same story. Sports outlets covering her run into the tournament have consistently framed her US Open campaign in the language of a career about to reach new heights. That's the language of a network building a story arc, not a network hedging a bet. Add it up. The tournament's own operational choices and the media's own editorial choices are already priced against a version of Eala that the WTA ranking system hasn't officially certified. That's proof 1, the cold, structural accountant's proof. Proof 2, the ring isn't a compliment. Take a breath here, because this one is harder to look at cleanly. There's a version of the story where the security detail is just a nice little detail, proof of how popular she's gotten, a badge of honor. That is not what it is. Eala herself has explained on the record exactly why that ring exists. She's described the Australian Open incident, training without security, then getting swarmed leaving the court, pressed toward a wall by a crowd that couldn't see what was happening at the front and kept pushing anyway. She called it kind of dangerous. She said it plainly. It was a learning process, and next time, security would be there from the start. That reframes the whole picture. The guards aren't a fashion statement. They're not a status symbol. They're a direct operational response, built by professionals whose entire job is translating crowd behavior into resource decisions. Which means her popularity has quietly crossed a line, from cultural phenomenon into logistical variable. When a tour player crosses that line, it changes what the sport can and can't do around her. It changes court assignments. It changes how her press conferences get routed. It changes hotel and transport arrangements. It changes which venues are eager to book her for exhibitions. The ring isn't proof that Alexandra Eala is popular. It's proof that her popularity has become the kind of quantity a Grand Slam has to actively plan around. That's a categorically different thing, and it costs her something. She said so herself out loud on a podcast, months before any of this reached New York. Proof 3. The purest signal the sport produces. Here's the one I want you to really sit with. Fan Week at the US Open is free. Say that again because it's the hinge the whole argument rests on. Anyone holding a free fan access pass can walk onto the grounds and choose, with zero financial barriers, zero self-selection by wallet, zero ticket buyer bias, exactly which practice court to stand at, which stage to sit in front of, which player to follow. That makes it the purest market signal a Grand Slam produces all year. It isn't the main draw, where a family flew in specifically to watch their daughter compete, and their seat choice was preordained months ago. It's a Monday afternoon in Queens, where a stranger wanders in, hears one court louder than the rest, and follows the sound. And the sound, this week, kept being her court, which means every person standing in that crowd chose her, over Sabalenka's court, over Alcaraz's court, over the shade, over the food trucks. That's what makes it impossible to write off as a diaspora effect alone. A diaspora effect explains why Filipino fans show up in force. It doesn't explain the woman with her phone above her head who came to watch Alcaraz and followed the noise anyway, filming a rally she can barely see. She's the proof. She's one of thousands of versions of herself wandering Flushing Meadows this week, each making a small individual choice that adds up to a signal loud enough to reach the security office, the broadcast truck, the exhibition producer, and the cultural programming desk, all in the same 7 days. What this doesn't prove, because honesty matters more than a clean narrative. I owe you the other side of this, because a reframe that overreaches is worse than no reframe at all. None of this proves Alexandra Eala is going to win the US Open. It doesn't prove she'll reach the second week. It doesn't specifically prove her practice crowds outdrew Aryna Sabalenka's. That's not something anyone has actually measured, and I'm not going to pretend it is, even though that exact claim has been floating around online. What this does prove is a real, measurable gap between where the WTA rankings currently place her and where the sport's own commercial infrastructure has already decided to put her. That gap is real. Whether she closes it over the next 2 weeks on the court is genuinely, honestly unknown. Her rise hasn't been a straight line. She was down as low as 140th in the world at one point earlier in her career, and even this season she dipped back into the 40s during the clay swing before climbing again. The Australian Open incident is a reminder that this level of visibility, this young, costs something real. There's no guarantee the market's read on her stays hot if results plateau. Markets cool. Bodies get tired. Draws get cruel. That's tennis. The reframe in this video is about what already happened during Fan Week. It is not a prediction about what happens on Ash. Those are two different questions, and pretending they're the same one would be cheating you. Where this leaves us, here's where I want to land. The genuinely interesting thing about this Fan Week was never that Alexandra Eala got noticed. She's been getting noticed since that mob practice court in Melbourne in January. Since Indian Wells, since Miami, since a run to the Wimbledon fourth round that beat a defending Grand Slam champion along the way. The interesting thing is that the noticing has finally reached the departments of the sport that write the checks. The USTA doesn't schedule a Kinding Sindaw performance on a whim. It doesn't hand over a live stream slot on a whim. It doesn't budget a security ring on a whim. Every single one of those was a decision, and every one of those decisions was made by an institution quietly betting it will be able to say, 3 years from now, that it saw her first. That's the room she's standing in now. Not the room of promising young players still hoping for a break. The room where broadcast trucks, exhibition producers, cultural programming teams, and security supervisors all already know your name before your first match and plan around you accordingly. She walked into that room this week. The woman filming over the top of the crowd at the practice fence didn't know it yet. The security guards did. The ranking will eventually. So here's the question I actually want you to answer in the comments. If Fan Week is where a Grand Slam quietly tells you what it thinks its next headliner is worth, what would you pay to watch her open? Not to root for her, just to watch. Drop a number in the comments. And subscribe, because from here we're tracking every single one of her main draw matches. And if this market read is right, this fortnight is going to be worth watching very, very closely.